Hello, my name is Ken Seaton. Welcome to Philanthropy Touch, a wonderful community of like-minded individuals that come together to share ideas, information, and hear inspirational speakers. You're about to hear something pretty amazing. I want to introduce to you Mick Ebeling, Sam Pankuchin, Dina Sampson, and Daryl Tordahl. And we're going to kind of go through this and give each of the panelists just a little chance to kind of introduce who they are. And so I'll sort of start moderating the panel here if I can. But I'm going to go ahead and start with Daryl, who's from Meals on Wheels. She'll tell you a little bit more about how she ended up being the CEO of the largest Meals on Wheels foundation in LA County, literally delivering thousands of meals a day. And now things have only gotten more hectic. Daryl, welcome.
Thank you. I've been with St. Vincent Meals on Wheels for about 30 years, first as a volunteer, and then as my arm got twisted by the founder to come and help her. I said I'd do it for about 3 months, and that was 20 years ago. So you know what's happened since then. I've run the foundation. We founded a foundation. I've run that. I was the interim executive director of St. Vincent Meals on Wheels for about 17 months after the founder passed away. Then I moved back into Director of Development for the foundation, and now am the CEO of Meals on Wheels California. So it's been a real whirlwind this last month or so.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Daryl. We're going to get into that a little bit in a minute here. Sam, why don't you give a little background on yourself, how you ended up being the CEO and founder of Golden Volunteers?
Sure. So I'm Sam, and Golden is both the most popular app for volunteering and the most globally awarded software for managing volunteer programs in every sector. So typically we'll work with nonprofits, companies, foundations, governments, schools, etc. But during this pandemic, we've been helping a lot of traditional organizers think in disaster relief mode all the time. So that means transitioning traditional volunteer programs, not just into online and training programs, but helping folks who usually put a bunch of people together in person to deliver neighbor-to-neighbor aid. So in that capacity, we've been working with a number of state governments, healthcare providers, and so forth. And we actually developed our mutual aid platform, which is designed to facilitate you helping neighbors, neighbors getting help, but also visually tracking the progress of delivery of those programs. So if you're managing some kind of community group and you want to see whose needs are outstanding, who's done them, how much work is being done, you can do that with our mutual aid platform that we actually researched and developed in partnership with Not Impossible Labs. So it's a small world.
I love it. I love it. Mick, I'm going to skip you now and go to Dina first. Dina comes from the restaurant world. Dina, give us a little background on your restaurant world, but then sort of where you're at right now and how you're pivoting a little bit here. You're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I own Rosa Blue downtown LA, and also Superfine Pizza with my husband, who's a chef, Steve Sampson, also another partner, Hans Lippman. We shut down the restaurant, when we were asked to do so by the mayor. Although we've dabbled in charitable work, we actually have now formalized that thanks to you, Kent, and your team. It's been amazing. We are focused on feeding our team that we had to lay off, 70 employees. We've actually combined with other restaurants looking to do the same. So now we're 300 strong, feeding 300 restaurant workers a day. And then also we were introduced, I guess people found out what we were doing and started to reach out and see if we'd be interested in other projects of feeding people here in LA. And so we are now also feeding 150 hospice families a week. And it's been very rewarding, and it's really something we're very excited about. And we've also done some frontline worker meals as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Dina, for coming on. Appreciate it. Mr. Ebeling, last but not least.
Hey there. Thanks for having me on. Hi, everyone. Mick Ebeling, founder and CEO of Not Impossible Labs. I have the good fortune of working with Kent for a while now, having now met Kirk, who's introduced me to some of the brilliant people on this webinar. We've had a good opportunity to work with Sam and his team, who are just a bunch of brilliant, mad geniuses over there. We're working right now in the food insecure space. We've been working in this space now. Not Impossible is an innovation lab. We work on a variety of different things. We label things as absurdities, and then we dogpile on it with hackers and makers and programmers and engineers, and we'll come up with a prototype that we can then scale off and spit out as a separately funded company. So we've done this now for 3D printed prosthetics. We've done it for ocular recognition devices for people with total paralysis. We've done it right now in a bunch of different spaces, but a couple years back, we started in the hunger space. Everyone here probably knows the statistics pre-COVID about food insecurity. We were appalled by that, so we created a very, very preposterously simple text-based solution that we deploy and give to nonprofits that is able to feed people through texting. And then post-COVID, it's just since the numbers of people, kids and families have skyrocketed in terms of need to be fed, we're really, it's one of those things that we feel sad that the numbers have hit, but we feel blessed that we've kind of spent the last 3 years refining this because we've been able to deploy it instantaneously. So we feel very lucky that the timing worked, because we're now feeding kids across a variety of different markets right now. So excited to have this conversation with you guys today. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. Thank you, Mick. That actually kind of nicely flowed in sort of the next question that I have. And I'm going to go back to Daryl, because Daryl's worked in the food space a long time. And maybe you can help everybody on the call, Daryl, to the best of your knowledge, and other panelists can fill in some of the details. But what are the statistics right now in terms of food insecurity? Give us a flavor of where that is today, right? COVID time.
Thank you. I'm in the senior space, so I know that inside and out. But what I know is that the senior space reflects a lot of other problems. So in the senior space, we've got 1.5 million seniors in California living alone who are over the age of 65 who are at risk. We've got 5.9 million seniors who may or may not be at risk, but they are living with someone else. So what's happened during this is that the things that Meals on Wheels programs across the state had known for a long time, which is food insecurity is poverty driven. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to fix that problem. People don't want to talk about things that are really basic to food insecurity. This, in my opinion, as Mick said, I think we have a silver lining here. The bones have been laid open, and everybody knows. I mean, when we have our governor saying we have to feed our seniors in that shocking space, and Meals on Wheels California has spent a lot of time with the governor's office in the last, I would say 72 hours, trying to figure out what the hell he did when he said seniors can now order their meals from a restaurant, and what that meant. But what it revealed to us in the Meals on Wheels world is that A, there's now a real recognition of what food insecurity is, but B, at many levels, the complexity of food insecurity and delivering food and measuring outcomes and being able to document that we can lower healthcare costs and make people healthier, happier, whether they're kids or seniors. So I think we really have this silver lining. We're gonna get this fixed now because we can't afford not to. And I'm really excited about that because seniors are isolated now because they're sheltering at home, they're hungry. Across the state, Meals on Wheels programs are saying they're up about 40 to 80% in numbers of seniors they're serving. You have to remember, seniors, if you're a very small little Meals on Wheels program operating out of a church basement, maybe you got 6 people and now you've got 12, you can figure it out. For us, we do 2,300 seniors a day already. Now we're at 3,000. Every one of those new people has to be screened because we have to know what their medical needs are, what their who's their first, contact, who's their emergency, all of those things. So we at St. Vincent created a hierarchy with 700 people one day call in. We had 5 volunteers on the lines. All the people like me who were 65 and older got sent home to work from home if you could, but all of our front office staff was sent home. So we had to train volunteers to answer the phones. Everyone who called, who was over 80 and lived alone, was immediately put on the program. After that, next 200 seniors were the 65 plus who were at risk for respiratory problems. And then we go down from there. But you can see the system is completely overwhelmed, and we are very well run at St. Vincent Meals on Wheels. The big Meals on Wheels programs in the state have great platforms, but no one was prepared for anything like this in terms of funding, in terms of, we have a huge kitchen. We have a 16,500 square foot commercial kitchen. You've been there, and it's gigantic. But we don't have enough space, enough freezer space to deliver or to produce and deliver thousands of meals a day. Now those meals have to be frozen because of the distancing. So you can no longer do what we did, which was serve a hot meal every day. So you've got this whole different system. You don't have enough freezer space. You don't have enough storage space. And now you've isolated the seniors further. So then you have to put in another program. So the food insecurity is a very complicated space, and not just for seniors. So, I could talk about it for about 7.5 days without stopping, but.
that gives us an idea. Thank you, Daryl, for giving us sort of an under the kimono look at stuff. Sam, obviously different perspective coming a different angle. What do you see in the demand? What's sort of your look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I will say some of these other panelists on here are so excellent at the domain expertise. So, I mean, by virtue of the fact that we're in this domain and so many others, I'll speak in a bit of the abstract. So one of the big problems that we're seeing, just for some context, is during normal disaster relief and recovery work, you have 3 phases of before, during, and after phase. Before, you kind of prepare for things to happen. You make sure you have all your ducks in a row. You identify plans. During, you clear the way and you let the designated first responders or supporters of whatever kind do their job. And then afterward, you kind of set up a cleanup plan and go in order of recovery. But throughout, you're really most concerned about the most vulnerable people. What's different about this pandemic is that there was no time to prepare at all, and it affected everybody, and any number of things could make somebody isolated. So the logistics, in combination with shelter-in-place guidance, makes it extremely difficult to make sure that the most vulnerable people are cared for, which is, exactly what Daryl was speaking about. The problem is that a lot of the folks who normally would be in charge of disaster recovery or delivering food are all of a sudden, in the spotlight for delivering these services, but none of their supply chains, none of their intake and delivery processes were designed to do one-on-one deliveries like this at scale. And so we're trying to help from the bottom up, to identify all of the individuals, to enable anybody who's in a position of organizing a bunch of folks who can offer help to be able to nimbly deliver it, whether it's food or medical supplies or anything else. And that's kind of one of the biggest challenges and lessons learned is, for those of us who professionally work in philanthropy and specifically delivering service, it's very convenient for us to say, well, there are a bunch of best practices. This is the way every program needs to work. And we're very formal in delivering care. But the reality is that all of us need a secondary approach to things that's more distributed, that depends more on folks in the field being enabled to exercise their best judgment, to follow precautions, to be able for us to account for the folks who are most disenfranchised. So even if, I'm not running a Meals on Wheels program, although we do work with many of them, but just as Meals on Wheels is trying to deliver all of these frozen meals to everybody or hot meals to everybody, it's just an analog for every other condition that folks are facing in addition to food. And it's a clear use case where you can start to see where things break down. But it's more than anything, a really good teaching moment for us to say, nobody should be above having both planned best practices and established channels for delivering care, as well as a toolkit and mechanisms for empowering grassroots approach to conduct activities on behalf of your organization. One other thing I'll say too is working with governors' offices, it's quite common for them to say, okay, we're going to work with these food banks, these food pantries, Meals on Wheels, and then just sort of put the thing in their lap. So it's, and then like a lot of these places told everybody to go work from home, or they don't have people shifted, or they have folks with disabilities on staff who can't be, or, who have a medical condition where they're vulnerable. And so right now it's all about workload balance and accountability for the most isolated folks.
That's some great stuff, Sam. And I'll circle back in a little bit to a couple of things that you brought up. Mick, would you like to comment upon the last two panelists and what they've said and what you're seeing in terms of demand and the food insecurity?
Sure. I mean, the statistics are kind of obvious right now. As I said, kind of in my intro, we had close to 50 million people who were food insecure pre-COVID, and 1 in 9 kids were food insecure. That was before schools closed, right? So now you've got every kid who was on a free or reduced meal program is now, rather than being food insecure on weekends or holidays, is now food secure every single day if they're not able to get to school, or depending on the deployment of whatever that school meal program has been able to mobilize. So for us, we see that what COVID has done is it has accentuated and highlighted some of the vulnerabilities within the population. And what we seek to do, and what we think, and we really challenge others in terms of our kind of design thinking, is how do you create a frictionless environment, or reduce friction to as much as possible. And what I mean by that is there's certain behaviors that people have that we will do naturally. And it depends on the age demographic, your technological prowess, where you grew up. There's a lot of factors that come into play. But if you can look to work with people and adopt deployment techniques and solutions that work within the way that the people already behave, then we see that as having a greater success. So it's, many of us have heard the kind of the martial arts adage that you use your enemy's momentum and aggression against them, right? So, and to say that in a more positive way, if you can keep someone's already adopted habits working in a way that can actually deploy something beneficial for them, then that's what we believe. So what we've really looked at, and we've studied a lot of everything from pantries and shelters to delivery systems, is we're always looking for how do you recognize something that's not going to require the person on the supply end and the person on the demand end to change their behaviors so much that it's too dramatic where they're going to opt out, right? If you make it frictionless, if you make it simple, you're going to have a higher adoption and a higher success rate. And by doing so, you'll actually have a greater success rate in what you're trying to do. And since this is a panel on food insecurities, ultimately that's about feeding people. So what we're really studying is almost from an anthropological perspective, and obviously because one of our mantras is technology for the sake of humanity, looking at it from a technological perspective, how do you create systems and mechanisms that fit into the way people already think and operate?
That's excellent. I'm going to circle back to you on that too. Dina, obviously, you have a different perspective being a restaurateur in a very hot, obviously culinary climate pre-COVID, and you probably have, all your friends are within that space, and you can kind of speak to kind of what you guys are seeing. So maybe you can shed some light on that for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as everyone has been saying, it really does highlight and magnify, topics that say were important before, but are super now even more important and more recognized. And I think one of them for us is the fact that, you know, restaurants, you know, they are the #2 employer behind the federal government. You know, 16 million people. 16 million people now basically almost all unemployed. And then of that amount, I mean, how many of them are undocumented workers that aren't able to get benefits and not have any income at all? You know, some people are getting unemployment and, you know, and that's fine. I mean, what we noticed about our, you know, our industry, at least here in LA, when I speak to my friends and co-owners is, you know, how are we going to help our teams, you know, the people that say can't get food right now. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we did start the Rosa Blue Restaurant Relief Fund, is to try to feed the, you know, not that we know, right, but undocumented workers in our industry. And so that's how it all started. But, you know, for us, it's like all of a sudden we found out there are so many other people that need food as well. You know, all of a sudden we had our investors coming to us saying, listen, we want to give money to feed the, you know, the hospice families. We want to give money to feed, you know, the homeless people. Like, how can you help as a restaurant? And what I don't understand, you know, this is all new to me, was why can't the government use us? And I know they're starting to, you know, I know that the governor has he wants to start feeding the seniors, and he's created that program. But it's like, how do I even apply for that? How can I help? It's like, we don't even know where to go and how to do that. And we want to, and a lot of the restaurants want to. Just like when we heard that the kids couldn't be fed, a lot of restaurants wanted to do that, and we didn't know where to. We don't know where to go. We need a little bit of direction, and hopefully somebody on this panel, you know, on this panel or in this group, can help direct us, because I know a lot of us want to do that. We all want to pivot our restaurants to help.
Can I hop in for a second and answer that question for Dina?
Please.
So this is a huge issue, Dina, because the governor announced that program, which came out of FEMA and the Office of Emergency Services. He did not include Meals on Wheels in the discussion, nor the Department of Aging. That we were all cut out. So when he launched that program, all the T's hadn't been crossed. So that's what I was referring to. Over the weekend, my board and I really banged out some policy and e-blast about where can the seniors call if they need help, if they're confused, where can restaurants call, because we're flooded. And I talked to several people in other Meals on Wheels programs throughout California today, and also in Washington, the big Meals on Wheels America program. Everybody is getting calls from restaurants saying, how can we help? But because, as Sam was saying, we didn't get the infrastructure and the points put together, people don't know. So if you have my email from Kent's, just email me. I can help you find the resources, because we're just now putting that together for everybody. Important to remember, this program is supposed to end on May the 10th. The red tape and the difficulty and it has to be a contract through FEMA, right. And it has to be documented, and it has to be, you know, everything else. It's unreasonable to ask that restaurants can do all that. They can't fill that. So in LA, I had a talk with the Department of Aging here. We're actually going to use taxis to deliver the food, because taxi drivers have already been background checked. So things like that would have been helpful. But if you reach out to me, I can give you some resources.
Great, I will. Thanks.
Yeah, this is great stuff. I saw Sam writing a little bit, so I feel like, I don't know if he was writing about this, but maybe Sam, you had a comment to jump in on that, or?
No, I think that's great collaboration. Good to see it happening.
So far, you've been listening to an amazing dialogue right now, and I hope you guys are pulling something from it. It's not only a chance to hear from wonderful people, but it's also a chance for you to think about the things that you're doing with your charitable social impact organization and how to improve. So it seems like, you know, each one of you, obviously there are pivots going on. You're alluding to sort of these sort of logistics issues and supply chain issues that you're kind of doing. What are you seeing for yourselves that's working? And maybe each one of you can kind of talk about that. Obviously with Sam, I hear about the mutual aid, and it sounds like there's some collaboration already with you and Mick, which is amazing, not surprising to me at all. But what is a pivot? Maybe you can explain what a pivot means, and how to pivot for people that are actually on this call who really want to help. What should they be doing and thinking about pivoting, and give it a story around what you guys have done. So Mick, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the pivot?
Sure. I mean, I think I talked a little bit about this a second ago, but pivots are kind of the recognition when you have, and this is a board full of faces of passionate people about whatever cause it is that you're passionate about. I think there's food insecurity. I heard sports. I heard autism. I heard a lot of different things. So one thing is true, that everyone's own kid is cutest, right? Everyone is passionate about what they're passionate about. And you're so convicted about that sometimes that blinds you. And I think that what we are really trying to do is to look at pathways of how people behave in a way that it's going to make it so that it's easy for them to do. And the thing that we've done with Hunger and Impossible, and this speaks a little bit, I think, Dina, to what you were saying in terms of restaurants want to help and people want to help. Well, talk about the way that people behave in terms of restaurants. Restaurants receive orders, they make food. Now there's outside services like Postmates or Grubhub that deliver food. People pick up to go. Those are habits that have now been widespread and adopted by the mass public. So how can you tap into those habits within the restaurant business such that it can continue some kind of momentum, especially within a COVID world? I also want to underscore or underline, bold, italicize the fact that you said that restaurant workers make up such a significant part of our economy. I also think that what you're looking at is a lot of those kids and families who are food insecure, or especially kids who are food insecure. A lot of those parents probably worked in the restaurant industry, and they had their living. Everyone knows the statistic that most people don't have more than $700 in savings. A check from the government that comes a couple months later is too late. It's already too late. So I think that one of the things that we're really striving to accomplish right now is we see it as it's a bifurcated approach. You can't cut the bleeding so much that the limb dies, right? So you can't, there's a reaction I think that many people have is just like jumping on whatever that particular problem is and ignoring kind of the residual effects of whatever that solution might be. So we feel very strongly that there has to be a way, even at keeping restaurants at break even, keep them at break even so that you can keep people employed, so that you don't have more people going onto unemployment, so you don't have more kids who are food insecure, because it just starts to snowball. So I think that what has to do, and what we have done, is looked at tapping into that kind of mean point of what restaurants need to make in terms of a per meal price that makes it so that it's attractive, that essentially, and you like to use the word compete, but essentially it competes with what philanthropic dollars are there for food pantries. Feeding America quotes that they can feed a family of 5 for 10 meals a week. I would very, very much challenge that statistic, because I think that they don't look at the blended cost of what it costs to operate their things. And in this situation where a lot of their food surplus has been drained and now they're forced to buy meals because they've had such a glut, now those food prices are out the window. So I think right now what we're looking at is how do you create means by which people can get to food, or food can get to people, and you can do it through easy interfaces and things that you guys already use. So, you can tell I get really animated when I talk about this, but I think that that's when we're looking at some of the stuff that Sam has created and some of the things that we've created as well. It's about looking at people's tendencies and how to mash those together so that we're not really asking you to do anything different, Dina. You should get up, go to your restaurant, make food, and go home. Now, you might have to change your pricing. You might have to change how you market. But if you can keep your people employed and break even, barely break even, then once all of a sudden the faucet turns back on, then it's a lot easier to kind of revive a car that's rolling than to revive a car that's on the, that's already dead, right? You have to push it a little bit and get it going, as opposed to kind of keep the momentum going. So I feel that it's really important for people on this call to start to look at, okay, how can I look at things that exist and keep those going, as opposed to how can we make a massive change? Daryl, you talked about this massive shift in red tape, and that's all bullshit. You're totally right. There's nothing that's going to do, because you're asking people to change so many mannerisms. Restaurants don't know how to access that money. Okay, great. How do we push that aside and deal with the fact that, great, while everyone's been dealing with the bullshit of red tape, we've had kids go hungry today. What are we going to do about that? So how do we engage more immediate solutions that we're not asking people to make massive changes?
It's a great response, Megan. I kind of want to get Sam. Sam has a vast understanding of the volunteer base and the value of human capital. And Sam, can you lend any perspective here to what that really means in the context of, this kind of an epidemic that we're having?
Yeah, totally. So I'll give just a little bit of background. I'll do a little bit of story time, because maybe we haven't had like a little vignette of a story so far. So when we started working with Mixed Team, there was a very specific use case. So we had this traditional software for, like I said, finding volunteer opportunities online or offline, doing them, or organizing any kind of volunteer program and tracking it. And the use case they wanted to look at was how to care for discharged patients after they leave a hospital. And a lot of those issues that you deal with are done one-on-one, and they can range in severity from everything from just general companionship and checking in on someone, or playing, backgammon with them, all the way up through, I need to go to the hospital now, and it's a question of whether there's an emergency, or whether, somebody else with specific skills is supposed to be there too. And we went through and evaluated all the different ways that we would use normally to match people with their interests and skills to do volunteering, but in a context where you are not just matching people with an opportunity and one that logistically works for them, but you're doing it in a very fine-tuned way where it's a very specific person, specific place, specific time windows, specific skills, specific capabilities, specific training, languages, etc. And so we kind of had to do what's called, what Nick referred to, user-centered design exercises around understanding each of the personas we're trying to serve, understanding the journey they go through to do the things they need to do as a recipient of care, but also a volunteer trying to provide that care, and also as somebody running a hospital discharge program to take care of the patients. And we just went through each of those use cases and tested a journey for the users that we felt would be more natural, and designed kind of a model for it. And that model, of course, is very applicable to every other form of support we're seeing now. And looking back at what that research led us to do, it also makes me personally and our team have very deep conviction around structured ways to do matching of individuals in real time. So if you look at other people, like there's several on this call who work in mentoring programs, or specifically like the most complicated mentoring programs are foster youth mentoring programs. So you have to understand a whole lot about the youth who's being fostered and the mentor who's participating, and there's a whole process that goes into that. Imagine doing all of the things required to match those two people now in a time where people need care immediately, and there are way more people who need care. And that's kind of what we're dealing with. And I think it's a balance of providing an interface that's easy and compelling enough for anybody to feel inclined to say, hey, I need help, or hey, I want to help. But it's also specific and structured enough to be able to break down what help people need. Because if you have tons of people just saying, hey, I'm hungry, or hey, I need help, you're not going to know anything about where they are, when they need their food, if they've got diabetes, if they've got food allergies, all these other considerations. So building a fast, but also reliable infrastructure for triaging all those things in a way that still looks fun is great. Otherwise, you would have a bunch of telephone operators sitting there in front of like Salesforce trying to punch things in, and nothing would get done either. So I think all of us are learning a lot, but developing your own taxonomy for what needs getting done, identifying those needs, and then testing a very natural, seamless journey of delivering those needs is the most effective way to start putting a solution in place. I'll also give a shout out to Helping Hands, who's on the call too, who I've been messaging with Michelle. Even we are admirers of that website. I don't know if you guys have seen it, helpinghands.community. They're not managing with their website the entire end-to-end process. They're focusing on intake and then doing the matching behind the scenes. But even that is the top of the funnel, just getting everybody comfortable with going to a destination to be able to express what they need, but doing it in a structured way where you can actually deploy against that need in a reliable way.
That's a great answer. Daryl, do you want to append, supplement, modify, alter, or reduce?
Yeah, I think, Sam, you've really hit the nail on the head. But and Mick as well, we really have to reduce all of this red tape and get to the essentials. What do we need to do? Who needs it, and who can provide it? Those are the three questions, right? And absolutely, I agree with you don't create any more friction than you have to. From my perspective, and I'm a real pusher for innovation, Kent knows I've done a lot of pushing. And not everybody always likes that. That's fine with me. But what we're looking at, if you're looking at an older, established, non-for-profit, you're looking at a system that is so tight and so intertwined, it is very difficult to make people change. And without, without the silver lining of this pandemic, which is so horrible, we will never get to that change because this is so shocking. We can never allow this to happen again. And I had a really interesting conversation with the head of the California Department of Aging, who's in the governor's office, and she said, I have to beat Meals on Wheels programs to tell me how many people they're serving, how many dropped off, how many came back, et cetera, et cetera. She can't get any information. She said, when this is over, we're going to have a statewide platform. And if you're going to be a Meals on Wheels program or a home delivered program of any type, you're going to have to be in the database so we can produce the information that we need to make the changes. And I think that intersection of the older, more established nonprofits who are in these very personalized services holds us back. And we have to have all this change now. We have to, because we can't afford to take another chance. This is way too risky. We have to get it right this time. And I really applaud you and Mick and all the other people who are pushing. I'm a big fan of Scott Kaiser's motion picture. They are doing amazing things with their database. I was just on the phone with Scott this afternoon. They're developing something that'll make it much easier to interface with volunteers who are in the Meals on Wheels and senior space. So there's a lot of great work being done. So I just want to applaud all of you. And Dina, you as well, for getting in there and saying, we want to help, just tell us how.
And I'll also jump in for a second on that too. So Daryl, for reference, we've been supporting the state governor's office as their volunteer platform for a while.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, it's amazing how much trepidation, I will say, that volunteer programs have had about getting online for years. And, I've been doing technology for volunteer programs since 2006. And even now, you still have people who are like, listen, we're an old school, in-person place. We can put things online, but we just want people to email us if they're gonna participate. And unfortunately, the world doesn't work at that speed anymore.
Mhm.
So I would actually, this is kind of like a call to action for anybody on this call who's working with programs that do things in person. The era of intake forms where you're waiting for somebody to email what they need to you or call or send some kind of communication that then is going to get sorted through and addressed for anything, it's over. And anybody who's had dependencies on programs like that, they're just not sustainable when there's a moment of crisis or when you're actually concerned about delivery of whatever the needs are. So I would say the solution to that, if you're feeling that pressure at all, where it's like, oh man, our process, it's very intake heavy, is to start thinking about the activities that you do as inventory and start to have your inventory cataloged and ready to go. Because whatever systems you're on, whether it's for volunteering or anything else, you need to be able to quickly list that inventory, quickly know the capacity, quickly be able to define what it is so that it can be set in motion. Because there's going to be just increasing automation of all these things in the future. It's not just about getting something online and in one platform. It's about understanding your operation to that degree of granularity, that it's as simple as plugging something in and letting the systems work for you so that you can spend your time making sure that people are safe, making sure that everything's functioning properly instead of doing administration.
I have to say, Sam, only one thing, which is preach, brother, preach, right? We are in, Dina, how long have you been in the restaurant business?
I've been in it for 10 years now.
10 years. So you've seen this cataclysmic shift in terms of automation, payment services, inventory controls, all of those things. So, and the restaurant business, it's not the oldest business. We all know what the oldest business is, but it's one of the oldest businesses. And it's one of those things that you now have the ability, rather than just drawing tickets and putting it in the little spinner, you now have this automation. Well, the nonprofit world has been slow to kind of take on that and adopt that change or keep up with that change. And I think that one of the things when Sam, you're talking about, we're in an era where measurement is everything. Data is king. It allows you to react. It allows you to respond. It allows you to do things. So you're not deploying water where there was medical needs and medical needs where there was water, right? You're deploying things in what is actually needed. So I think in that pursuit of data, it's one of the things that we've really, really strove to accomplish with the Hunger Not Impossible platform, is that both the charities that we deploy with have access to seeing every single one of their kids, every single one of their families, what they ate, when they ate, where they ate it. You can drill down the rabbit hole, total caloric intake and fats and starches. You can go down that deep. On the restaurant side, you can see what's being responded to in terms of what's being ordered from that population. And then the holy grail, which we're working on, is being able to tie into the fact that, hey, Dina, we want you to be profitable as a restaurant. How do we create some kind of interface with your inventory so that you're an experienced restaurateur, so you can kind of stick your finger in there and go, I think we really probably should have a special on chicken this week. Imagine if the data could tell you when that was happening and create price points around that so that you could sell that at a lower price point to address any of the population that's needed. You could address Daryl's population. You could address, any of the population at the Dodgers Foundation, anybody, these people, but you're doing it in a way that's economically viable for you and your employees, because we got to keep your employees employed, or otherwise then they get kicked over into Daryl's program, and we want to keep people out of Daryl's program, right? That's Daryl's goal, everybody's goal, but we got to do that based on data. And there's a way for us to do that intelligently, and it's not a mainframe room of, a refrigerated room of IBM mainframes anymore. It's really simple systems. It's just creating those connective tissues that do that. And that's what we're working really, really hard to do, so that it takes the emotion out of our decision-making process and puts way more into just the facts. And you can make decisions based on the data that you're reviewing.
This is, really, really amazing stuff. I did not give these guys the answers to these questions before we started. This is all stuff that they think and feel and see. I think I'd like to know, I want to switch gears for a second and talk about the funding side to the equation, right? And, how are you looking at the funding side? I mean, that's a bit of the challenge, I bet, for everybody. So maybe we'll start with you, Daryl, and then we'll kind of move our way through. And I know there's some for-profits here too, but you can still talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, so we have, since the 16th of March, I have been, working very, very hard to make sure that we could fund through, because St. Vincent Meals on Wheels is a privately funded Meals on Wheels program. In fact, we're the largest privately funded Meals on Wheels program in the country. It's a slightly different issue for us. So I had to go back to funders who are what I would say friends, and Kent, you and I have talked about this, we know some of those people, and say, hey, guys, what can we do together here? And what I've been very impressed by is the fact that the funders have stepped right up and said, okay, this is what we used to ask for, and now this is what we're going to ask for. And again, I was talking with a colleague today who said, we both just received funding from the Eisner Foundation, and we're saying we love these shortened applications, right? There's like one page and you'd attach some documents because it's an emergency and they know that they have to get the funding out quickly. So I have found that funders with whom I've worked for many years have been very, very generous. I've also found that this is when I was able to go to friends and say, hey, I remember, your husband used to work with so-and-so, and I know they have a foundation, and can we pull them in now? Whereas maybe in a regular time frame, they wouldn't. They've been very generous, and we have been, I cannot tell you how blessed we have been. We have been we are going to be able to take care of everybody that needs taken care of, because our community of support, which is everybody, whether it's a big funder or not, has really reached deep. So I feel very grateful, very, very grateful.
Thank you, Daryl. Well, Dina, I know I know a lot of, people around you. So, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you know what? I loved what you said in the beginning, Kent, when you said, if you just kind of do the work and inspire the people, you actually don't have to ask, we'll just give it to you. And that's kind of what's happened to us. We've been very lucky so far. Also, my husband's very good with food costs, so we've been able to really feed a lot of people with the little funding that we've received so far. Another thing that's been really interesting during this time is, you think about the restaurants, and then you think about who we would buy from, right, if we were open. I mean, they had stockpiles and stockpiles of food. I mean, the potential food waste here was just ridiculous. And so what we did was we reached out to all our vendors and said, listen, anything that you're gonna throw away because nobody's buying, let us know. Like, Steve will cook it up and we'll serve those hot meals to the families. And so we've been able to get a lot of food donated, actually, from a lot of our vendors.
Yeah, how many people took you up on that offer? Were the companies taking you up on that? To donate
to donate their yeah, everybody. There was so much food, so much. I didn't realize how much. I asked one of our vendors. The next day they showed up with 2 huge pallets of food. Like, we didn't even have enough room in our freezer or walk-in, and that was just one vendor.
Yeah, so, if you look at Sysco, SYSCO, the food provider, and you look at their free fall of a stock. Yeah. We were talking to their CFO, and his biggest thing was, look, he's a very dear guy. He was like, listen, the stock market and finance that's one thing. We've got warehouses full of food that are going bad, right? Yeah. And that goes back to that's amazing. I love that you took that scrappy approach and just got on the phone and made it happen. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Had to.
It's great stuff. And not talked about enough, Dina, the food waste. Mick, anything you're seeing on the funding side? I mean, you're interesting because you're in the intersection between for-profit and nonprofit. So interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, on the funding side for us right now, we are not Hunger Not Impossible is a for-profit platform that we made so that it can be given away. We've basically, our COVID response, and I feel like it's a duty to the country and to what's going on in society, is to give it away to nonprofits so they can deploy. We've partnered with the Wasserman Foundation and the Wasserman Group to look towards athlete influencers to help to crowdfund. The way that we look at the world right now is it's not a matter of how much money you raise, it's a matter of how many meals you serve, right? So we estimated a certain food cost, a price per meal, because we were working through the net of Hunger Not Impossible is that it takes everything that a Postmates platform does, but it makes it text enabled, because I don't know how many people, you got 60, 70 people on this call right now, Kent. If everybody was relegated to only having 2 functions on their cell phone, it would probably be call and text. So that being the lowest common denominator, we created a text-based application that interfaces with Postmates that's able to place orders so that we're not asking you to enter things or download anything. So us in doing that, we've now created kind of a pathway for people to get easy food. They do it through alphanumeric prompts. But the way that you would see it, Dina, is that you would see it just like any other order that came in. So we're using kind of that influencer model to fundraise, because we feel, again, that's social media right now that's all people have to do, is to be at home on phones, on Zoom calls, and social media. So we're using that as kind of our function to get us to start to kind of seed the model. And now we're also looking at some of our partners to do like buy one, give one meals. So if someone who's not food insecure buys a meal, they can donate a meal. But what we've started to do is drop those food prices down from, the average price at first was $7, which was very daunting when you're having kind of comparisons to Feeding America. And then that dropped down to $5, and now we're getting down to $2.50. And you're like, wait a second, this is good, because now it's not a drain on the supply chain. It's actually tapping into a supply chain, and it's keeping people like Dina and other, franchisees open. So that's kind of been it's been a meandering pathway, Kent, that has kind of only revealed recently to kind of been successful. So.
Profound. Sam, do you want to kick in on the funding? I know you're not totally in the nonprofit, but you probably have a take on it.
Yeah, so I mean, we're a for-profit social venture. As far as our operations as a tech company go, that's kind of the best structure for us. We raise private capital and we make revenue from licensing certain technologies that we offer. Right now, we're really not in the mindset of optimizing for revenue. We're really in the mindset of optimizing for making sure that there's continuity of everybody's programs. We will be taking advantage of a moment where people can appreciate what we're working on and why it's important, probably to bring some new folks into the company. But we also know that everybody is being very conscious about the resources that they have right now. But I can say that it's a huge character building opportunity to be working on something right now for which you actually have a direct use of funding. And it's been a good practice to kind of pull up from the work we've been doing every day and go and let people know who are standing on the sidelines that now's a really good time to put resources to work. So I think we're all in it together. Everybody's, got to take the resources you can get. But the hope is that there are a good number of people out there that realize that this is an opportunity for them to step up to the plate and be a part of it too.
Pretty profound stuff. We have a sort of rule. We like to begin on time, which I basically adhere to, and we like to finish on time, which is 7:30. It's obviously late at night. I will say for me personally, this is a profound conversation. I think what I learned from the panelists is mostly about how this is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really look at how charity's done. Sam Fankuchin got in this for the right reasons 14 plus years ago. These are the opportunities to really look at how the charity world can actually solve problems and what the weaknesses are. so you can shore those up for the future. There's actually a silver lining here, but everybody has to look at it and take it very seriously. A lot of the people on these calls, Dina, we're not in the restaurant business. We're in the charity world. You know, we've tried to get into the charity world for deep reasons that are serious. So a guy like Sam, it's pretty cool saying he had a volunteer app. Now it's real. How many volunteers do you have? Where are they at? You know nothing about all that stuff. And the other competitors within the volunteer world, if you will, the other platforms are not nearly as evolved. So you have to have great minds thinking about social problems, because those great minds can find ways to do things in elegant, simple ways that are innovative and actually solve the problem, rather than going back to what Daryl said, which is a lot of red tape to feed somebody, right? Because that's all you're trying to do. And then you talk about food waste, Dina, and that's all these unleveraged assets in the world that literally just vanish. Human capital and volunteerism, an incredible amount of currency in that's not being used efficiently and well, right? All because you don't have the right data points. You've not been able to pin things together to solve major problems. And that's what everybody on this call has in common. So really appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart showing up. Mick, you know, I'm really happy I didn't have to pay you $60,000 to join this panel today. His original offer to me. But we thank you for doing that. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Daryl and Dina, for representing the restaurateurs as well and giving us a little insight. On behalf of Kirk Scott, CJ Woods, Tawny Stevens, and myself, thank you guys so much. Have a great evening. Wow, what an amazing amount of content we just heard around philanthropy. What a wonderful story. What a wonderful opportunity for you guys to hear this and find ways to help your organizations or the people that you're involved with do better, have more impact, and change the world.